Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Rory McLennan coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. On the second day of his apostolic visit to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Pope Francis presided over Holy Mass at Ndolo Airport in Kinshasa on Wednesday morning, with the Mass being attended by over 1 million believers. In his homily, the Pope told the Congolese that they should never yield to sorrow or fatalism, as evil will never have the last word. He exhorted them to lay down their arms and embrace mercy, just like Jesus said. The Holy Father told believers that Christ knows the wounds of their nation, adding that he wishes to console and heal them. Pope Francis told the multitude before him not to be afraid to fetch the crucifix from their neck and pockets and hold it close to their hearts in order to share their wounds with the wounds of Jesus. He also exhorted them to do the same when they reach home. The Mass in the rite of Zaire of the Roman Missal was celebrated by Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Besungu of Kinshasa Archdiocese, with cardinals and archbishops of the papal entourage and clergy from across the DRC concelebrating the Eucharist. President Felix Tshisekedi and First Lady Denise Tshisekedi, Prime Minister Jean-Michel Sama Lukonde Kyenge, military top brass, and other ministers and cabinet members were present for the Holy Mass, which was offered in French, with chants in Lingala, Swahili and Chiluba. On Tuesday, the day he arrived in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Pope Francis delivered his first speech in the country. He denounced the nation's ongoing conflicts and the exploitation of its vast natural resources by other powers. After paying a courtesy visit to President Felix Tshisekedi, the Pope met with representatives of the government, civil society and the diplomatic community in the garden of the Palais de la Nation in Kinshasa. The Holy Father urged the Congolese people to take control of their destiny by rejecting violence and hatred. He added that he is travelling as a pilgrim of reconciliation and peace, and that his trip is motivated by his wish to convey to them the closeness, affection and consolation of the entire Catholic Church. The Pope compared the DRC to a diamond, but said the Congolese people are infinitely more precious than any gem. The Holy Father condemned the ongoing exploitation of the country and the entire African continent in the form of economic colonialism, which he described as enslaving. He said the country is not a mine to be stripped or a terrain to be plundered. He said, "May Africa be the protagonist of its destiny." Tomorrow morning, the Holy Father will be meeting with young people and catechists in Martyrs Stadium. This will be followed by a prayer meeting with clergy, religious and seminarians. Also lined up is a private meeting with members of the Society of Jesus at the Apostolic Nunciature. The Apostolic Nuncio to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Archbishop Ettore Balestrero, has shared his thoughts on Pope Francis's apostolic journey to the country. The Archbishop explains the rationale behind the Pope's apostolic journey in an exclusive interview with Shalom World News. The Nuncio hoped that the apostolic journey brings lasting peace and reconciliation to the nation.
I hope that the apostolic visit of Pope Francis will bring reconciliation. This is one of the major purposes. This is the lemma which gathers, links, binds the visit. Then peace and reconciliation depend from the heart of the people.
Despite multiple difficulties, he claimed that there is big excitement. The Holy Father's visit is also a sign of respect for all the sufferings and atrocities Catholics have endured in the region and are still facing every day. In one of the most enthusiastic welcomes of his international travels, tens of thousands of people cheered as the Holy Father drove into the capital city Kinshasa in his Pope-mobile. Some broke away to chase his convoy, while others yelled and waved flags. Pope Francis, who is 86 years old, is the first Pope to travel to the country since Pope St. John Paul II did so in 1985, when it was still known as Zaire. Roman Catholics make up around half of the DRC's 90 million population. Here are glimpses of some historic moments when Pope St. John Paul II visited what is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Pope St. John Paul II was the last head of the Catholic Church to visit the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Polish pontiff's visits to the nation in 1980 and 1985 were a huge success. In 1980, he received a cheerful welcome at Njili from thousands of people who had gathered there to greet him. In one of his speeches, the saint urged the faithful to carry evangelization to sectors and groups where the gospel was still unknown. Just one day after a Biden administration official broached the notion, Republican US Senator Marco Rubio unveiled a bill that would forbid the executive branch from increasing abortion access during a public health emergency. The measure, which Rubio presented on Tuesday, would bar any emergency declaration that was meant to punish states that restricted abortion or encourage, support, or increase access to the procedure. It would specifically forbid the President from issuing a Stafford Act emergency declaration or a national emergency, as well as the Secretary of Health and Human Services from issuing a public health emergency for the same reason. Many Democratic senators have urged US President Joe Biden and his team to declare an emergency to increase access to abortion. International campaigners have asked US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to keep human rights at the top of his agenda as he gets ready to begin his journey to China. They hope that Blinken will seek the release of young people who were detained as a result of the recent peaceful demonstrations when he meets with Chinese officials. Several men and women were arrested for organising the Blank Page movement, a non-violent demonstration against the government. Although no official announcements have been made as of yet, the Secretary of State is anticipated to visit China in early February to resume conversations regarding one of America's most important but challenging relationships. The president of Citizen Power Initiatives for China, Jianli Yang, said the Chinese Communist Party's oppressive zero-COVID policy was the initial cause of the protests, which swiftly grew into a movement calling for greater freedoms. He opined that freedom is crucial for life and added that Chinese President Xi Jinping has transitioned from a dictatorship to a politics of game playing. The Sant'Egidio community, a lay Catholic organisation devoted to humanitarian work, and Kenyan activist Shamsa Abubakar Fadil, also known as Mama Shamsa, have won the 2023 Zayed Human Fraternity Award respectively. According to a statement issued on Tuesday by the committee, Shamsa was honoured for nurturing youth in Kenya and saving young people from a life of violence, crime and extremism by giving them counselling, care and training. Meanwhile, the community of Sant'Egidio was being recognised for its contribution to successful peace negotiations and conflict resolution through religious diplomacy and intercultural dialogue and community services it provides in different parts of the world, as well as its Humanitarian Corridors initiative, which brings refugees from war-torn countries to Europe. The award has been given out annually in honour of the recipients' contributions to spreading the values of human fraternity and providing an example of fostering peaceful coexistence. After eliminating its Christian term titles, the London School of Economics was charged with being ashamed of Britain's history and culture. The school claims that the name changes are necessary to better reflect the worldwide makeup of our community. From the next year, Michaelmas will be known as autumn term, Christmas break will be known as winter break, Lent term will be known as winter term, and Easter break will be known as spring break. The LSC, founded in 1895, will discontinue using its present term names from the beginning of the 2023-24 academic year, which begins in September. This comes after the University of Brighton advised staff not to say Christmas and instead call it the winter closure period. Simon Calvert, the Deputy Director of the Christian Institute, said it is typical that in the name of inclusivity, Christians and those who value Christian heritage are excluded. On Tuesday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis revealed a new set of planned changes to the state's higher education system, including the elimination of all critical race theory and diversity, equity and inclusion curriculum. At the State College of Florida, Manatee, Sarasota, DeSantis outlined a comprehensive set of changes he claimed would guarantee higher education remains founded in the ideals of liberty and Western civilization. The critical race theory framework dates back to the 1970s. It is defined as a movement of activists and scholars interested in studying and transforming the relationship among race, racism and power. Some conservatives claim that critical race theory is divisive and unfairly demonizes people of particular racial groups. The governor's staff distributed flyers with the slogan "Education, not indoctrination" to the reporters present at the briefing on Tuesday. In the flyer, DeSantis calls for adjustments to academic requirements and course content, saying that Florida universities should prioritise graduating students with degrees that lead to high-wage jobs, not degrees designed to advance political agendas. Nearly 95% of countries have made little to no progress against corruption since 2017, and the majority of the world still fails to do so. That is according to Transparency International's 2022 Corruption Perceptions Index. They conclude that corrupt governments cannot safeguard their citizens, and public unrest is more likely to escalate into violence. The study gauges how professionals and entrepreneurs view public sector corruption. According to Transparency International chairperson Delia Ferreira-Rubio, governments have collectively failed to combat corruption, fueling the present uptick in violence and conflict. Nations are rated on a scale of 0, being very corrupt, to 100, extremely clean. With 90 points, Denmark is rated as the country with the least corruption this year, with Finland and New Zealand closely behind at 87. The report also pointed out how after decades of conflict, South Sudan is in a major humanitarian crisis, with more than half of the population facing acute food insecurity, and corruption is exacerbating the situation. In Eastern Europe, corruption is seen as remaining rampant. Russia in particular was highlighted as a glaring example of corruption's impact on peace and stability. Governor Spencer Cox of Utah signed a measure on Saturday prohibiting medical professionals from performing sex change procedures on children and establishing new guidelines for when they can administer hormone blockers and transgender hormones to youngsters who experience gender dysphoria. One day after the Utah legislature sent Senate Bill 16 to Cox's desk, the Republican governor signed it. It was sponsored by Republican State Senator Mike Kennedy. It will become active on the 1st of July. If a person no longer agrees to the sex change, they may also file a malpractice claim against the provider for the treatment they received when they were minors. Taliban officials reiterated a mandate from last month that forbade female students from attending higher education by sending a letter to private colleges over the weekend, instructing them not to permit women and girls to appear for entrance examinations. This is the most recent blow for women and girls in Afghanistan since US forces left the country in 2021. The nation's new religious leaders, who uphold a strict interpretation of Islamic law, have outlawed girls' attendance at middle and high schools, placed restrictions on women's freedom to travel alone, and forbade them, with a few exceptions, from working outside the home. According to a copy of the Taliban's letter that the Associated Press received, legal action will be taken against the violation if any university disobeys the directive. To put an end to ongoing protests, the Peruvian Congress has urged that elections be moved from October of 2026 to this coming October. A proposal calling for a new president and a new Congress to take office on January the 1st of next year was rejected by Peruvian legislators. The elections were then proposed to be moved to this October as a compromise. It received only a muted response. However, the current president of Peru, Dina Boluarte, told legislators that if they didn't accept this, she would push for a complete rewrite of the constitution. The amendment has been approved by Congress with a bare minimum of 66 votes. The two-thirds majority required for ultimate approval is still far away. Following then-President Pedro Castillo's unsuccessful attempt to dissolve Congress on December the 7th, he was taken into custody after the impeachment vote and is now being held on rebellion-related charges. Vice President Dina Boluarte was swiftly elected to become president. However, tens of thousands of protesters want her to step down and new elections to be held immediately. This most recent attempt at a compromise is unlikely to be sufficient to quell the turmoil, which has spread to Lima, the country's capital city, where violence over the weekend claimed the life of one demonstrator. Meanwhile, the Pontifical Foundation Aid to the Church in Need is organising prayer for peace and unity in Peru from the 2nd of February to March the 9th. Authorities in Madagascar have reported that tropical storm Chineso left 30 dead, 20 missing and thousands displaced. Madagascar's first tropical storm of the year made landfall on the 19th of January. A number of these storms frequently impact the island nation in the Indian Ocean every year. In a report made public late on Monday, the government's Office for Risk and Disaster Management stated that the storm, which triggered flooding and landslides, had forced roughly 37,000 people to leave their homes. The government announced a death toll of 16 last week. At least 138 people were killed and about 130,000 were left without homes in January and February of last year after 4 major storms hit Madagascar. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again tomorrow for more. And in the meantime, do always remember you can visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.